Olson, attorney for the Board of Adjustments. With this appeal, there are three legal issues that have popped up, which, for the board's knowledge, may affect the ability for the board to hear it, or it may not. Specifically, under Bayfield County Ordinance 13-1-21, parent B, parent 6, concurrent jurisdiction exemption, needs to be determined whether or not the Board of Adjustments has the ability to make any form of decision relative to water rights, or is that in the sole purview of the Department of Natural Resources? So that's the first issue. If it comes back that the Board of Adjustments does not have the ability to hear this matter, then the question arises is, does a conditional use permit need to be utilized or granted? And if the board determines yay or nay on that, the next issue is what else needs to be discussed or determined. So what I would suggest is, based upon the legal issues on this, that briefs be provided to the board outlining either their for or against the determination that the Board of Adjustments has jurisdiction over this matter, as well as if the conditional use permit is needed, and if it is or isn't, what other legal issues or issues may need to be discussed. So those are the three legal issues that have presented themselves, and again, I believe there needs to be a determination made as to, first, whether or not the board even has jurisdiction to hear this matter. So I guess what I would suggest to the board or recommend is that a motion be made to allow a briefing schedule. And what I have discussed with council is that folks that believe the Board of Adjustments does not have jurisdiction over this matter should submit a brief to the board by August 9th. And the individuals or entities that believe that the board does have jurisdiction to hear this. Go ahead, Jack. Did you have a question?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Olson. One of the things that John mentioned, and I agree with John Carlson, I apologize, Mr. Carlson mentioned was rather than having the first brief be people who say there's no jurisdiction and then the opposition, so that everyone gets a chance to respond to both sides, is anyone who has an opinion on the issue of jurisdiction, that they submit it for or against jurisdiction, no jurisdiction, and then everyone can respond to that. So we kind of like in normal cases, everyone gets to respond to everyone's argument, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I apologize if I misspoke. So that is what the discussion was. So again, anyone who's interested in having their voice heard on this, believing either the board does or does not have jurisdiction, should submit a brief by the 9th of August, and then folks who would like to respond to that can do so by the 16th of August. That's what the recommendation would be.
Right, well then the intent is that the Board of Adjustment would then be able to review all of the submitted materials, and then at its August meeting, which is the 26th, we would be able to have a determination on the legal issues, as well as have a public hearing on the merits of the matter as well. So that we'd be able to take testimony and complete all of that in one day, so that there would be a decision then, perhaps on the 26th of August, assuming that there wouldn't be a need to adjourn and continue.
Jack,
Mr. Carlson, just to be clear, because this is the point you made, I think, earlier, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think just to be clear so the public weighs in on it, there's really two initial legal issues, if not three, but the first issue is this jurisdiction. The second one that Mr. Carlson articulated to you, Mr. Olson, and me earlier was, if there is no jurisdiction over this, over a small well, or a non-large capacity well, then does Kristle Clear even need a CUP at all? So that make sure the public weighs in on that. And then the third issue, just again to be clear from our prior discussion, is if there is no need for a CUP, then that hearing on August 26th would not be necessary, because there'd be nothing to hear, because the board would have determined that there is no CUP required. Conversely, the third issue is if the board says no to number one, says that they do have jurisdiction, and number two, they say that Kristle Clear needed to submit a CUP for question number two, then we turn to question number three is, okay, so what do we do? What's relevant, and how do we go forward? And that's principally the issue Mr. Carlson raised about de novo review versus the normal appeal process. So I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to weigh in, so we don't have, given the public input, that no one screams later that we didn't clearly inform them of all three issues that you're anticipating being heard.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The process that needs to be made is there needs to be a motion made by the board, if the board's agreeable, to have briefing done on this legal issue. Again, those that are in favor or opposed, believing that the Board of Adjustments has jurisdiction, should submit something by August 9th. That's just the proposal. So, yeah.
So if you would just briefly state the three legal issues that we need to deal with again.
Sure. So the three legal issues that need to be dealt with, number one is, does the Board of Adjustments have jurisdiction to hear anything that deals with water based upon the concurrent jurisdiction exemption in Bayfield County zoning? And the other issue then is, if it comes back that the board does not have jurisdiction to hear that issue, does a conditional use permit even need to be granted for what the appellant wants to do? And
I'm going to stop you right there. You said if it comes back. So that means we should meet in order to review that. Or are you talking about sending it to outside agency right away?
I'm sorry, the question.
Well, you said if it comes back. So we have a brief for people who say that we don't have jurisdiction.
No.
So we need to review that.
Correct.
Okay, so it's coming back from us, that we made a decision whether we have jurisdiction or not.
The board will be making that determination,
Right.
But there's going to be briefing from both sides to kind of.
So then you said that the briefing is, then there's first briefing, and then there's a week before the next briefing, the next people, that are opposed to that. Mm-hmm. So then when do we meet to review that? Are we meeting at our regular meeting, or are we meeting ahead of time to review that?
What could be done on this is the board's going to get the briefs. They're going to have a chance to review it. The meeting will be held on the 26th. If there's questions or you believe you need to confer with me or anyone, I believe that you'd be able to go to a closed session just to discuss that determination, and then come back and go on the record. There could be no decision made in closed session. It's just for asking questions. Everything needs to be done in the public realm. So that's what could happen if the board would desire to do that.
But at that point, so this is Sturm again. At that point, we'll have both of the briefs from both sides.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So the first briefings for or against will be done on August 9th, and people will then have a chance to respond to that.
Okay.
Those briefs, and those have to be due by the 16th of August, which is a Monday. Does that make sense? Okay.
The part that doesn't make sense is who's the people that are going to respond to that? How are they going to know what the brief says? Why don't they do it at the same time? If the issue is placed before us all.
Sure, but there may be some issues brought up in the briefs for or against that folks would like to respond to.
Okay, I understand. So would we need to have a meeting then?
Well, the meeting will be on the 26th.
Okay.
And again, like I said, there'd be, the board is going to get these briefs in advance. And hopefully everyone will have a chance to read through those briefs. And if there are issues that do present themselves that you have questions on, again, that's why I'm here.
We can have a closed session.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Adrian, please continue with your questions.
Just to get all three of those clarified, so you went through 1 and 2 and you.
Yep, and the third was if a conditional use permit is not required, is there anything left that needs to be done?
And who makes the decision that the board has jurisdiction? How is that determined?
That's gonna be the board's decision.
So that we as a body will
Correct,
make
so
that determination.
you'll be reviewing the briefs from both sides, and, based on that, you'll be making a determination if you have jurisdiction.
So on the meeting on the 26th, we would be making that determination on that date.
Correct.
Would we then go through the regular hearing process for additional input and comments and?
Yeah, the goal is on the 26th to hear everything. So
Okay.
if the board believes they have jurisdiction to hear this matter, then, it's gonna be probably a longer hearing. If the board determines they don't have jurisdiction to hear the water issue, there may be smaller issues that need to be dealt with. I don't know, it would just depend on what the board determines the issues to be.
And I'm sorry, what was the second issue? The first one was, does BOA have jurisdiction?
Yeah, and the second issue is, if the board determines there is no jurisdiction, is a conditional use permit even required in this circumstance?
I thought that was number 3.
Nope, number 3 is if a conditional use permit is not required, is there anything left that needs to be?
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand now.
We still need a.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Olson, just to clarify for the Madam Chair, is that third one is if there's not something left. I think the way you described it earlier is really no matter what they decide on the second question, then they have to figure out how they want to proceed. Is it de novo? It's not a yes or no. It's
So, and thanks, Jack. So what that is basically if the board determines that, CUP isn't needed, then they're going to determine how to proceed, whether on the record or we're going to have another de novo hearing, just to support that.
All right.
The intent here is to provide the board with as much information as possible with the briefing schedule, so that on the 26th, you can make that decision on the legal issues, as well as proceed as necessary with a public hearing on the rest.
Okay.
Could I just have identifiers for the 2 gentlemen that just spoke that are sitting in the back?
yes. The first.
Go ahead. This is John Carlson, and the other gentleman is Jack Perry.
Thank you.
As the chair, I would ask for a motion that we schedule a closed session after the 15th when we have the briefs.
I'll second Whiteman.
So you're making the first motion, Adrian, and then we should have a second?
I thought you're making a motion.
Well, I don't think I should. Just asking for you guys to make a motion.
Still moved.
All right. Should we schedule that now? Okay, so it's after the 15th, right,
The
Steve?
16th is when
After the 16th?
the board may want to give themselves a little bit of time just to review everything prior to meeting.
Suggestions for a date from the board? We have the meeting on the 26th. So maybe, so that's 10 days, so should we shoot for about 5 or 7 days? Yeah, okay, do I have just any further discussion?
Do we want to get an exact time as well?
Of course, thank you, good discussion. Council,
Whatever is good for the.
let's shoot for 11 a.m., or let's shoot for 10 a.m. so he doesn't have to drive in the middle of the night. Is that 10 a.m.? And then we have a freedom to go longer, however long we need.
10 a.m. meeting right here.
Yes. 10 a.m. meeting. So that has to be posted as a closed meeting.
So, Madam Chair, are you wanting to do just closed session, or are you going to make any decisions that we need to, we're just trying to figure out how we're going to agendize this. So you're just going to have a closed session to confer with council.
Confer with council after we receive the briefs on both sides.
And then your actual decision is going to be made on the 26th?
That is correct.
Okay.